What's up, guys? I'm Rob from Boosted Cycle Performance, and this is part 2 of the 500 horsepower for $1,500 build. I want to apologize. I started going through yesterday's video and started editing it, and I was kind of rambling on about things, so bear with me on it. This is all new to me, but also too, I want to make sure that I got all the information across as far as where I want to go with this particular part of my channel. But also too, if you guys have any ideas or suggestions for other videos, things you want to know in regards to tuning or building engines or I don't know, setting up boost controllers or data loggers or wiring or any of that stuff, just go ahead and leave a comment down there below. And I also ask that you please like and subscribe to the channel, and please, if you like it and you think you have buddies that would be interested in seeing all this kind of in-depth kind of stuff too, that you please share it. So where we left off, got the bottom end done here, and next we're gonna put the pistons on, cylinders, do the head, cams, do all that stuff. So let's go ahead and get at it. So moving right along here, guys. So as you saw in the time lapse, I hung the pistons, put the head studs in, and put the base gasket on. This is the factory base gasket. I'm just reusing it. I'm not gonna copper coat it because the factory ones here, they have like a rubber coating on them, so you don't need to copper coat them. Just one thing to remember when you're putting these things together, make sure you got the dowel pins in here. And then also a little secret, I guess if you want to call it, that I learned from a Formula 1 engine builder. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. But if you look at the wrist pin clip here, I'm gonna find a piston over here real quick, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So here we got a stock piston, and here's the clip that holds the wrist pin in. Now, I remember reading something that a Formula 1 engine builder stated about putting in these clips, and it makes sense. I've never seen any failures because of this. But like I said, it makes sense. So it's basically a C-clip, like that. And if you look, you can see one end's right there, and then the other end's right there. Now, if you see the opening is directly on the side here. So what happens is when the piston's going up and down, on real high revving engines like this, when the C's going up and down, it can actually shrink because it's changing direction so many times, and it can actually pop the C clip out. Like I said, I don't know if that's 100% true. I mean, if the Formula 1 engine builder says that, I'm sure they've probably seen it. So what I do when I put the C clips in is I'll put it so the opening is facing towards the bottom. And that way you have less chance of the clips popping out. So that's just a little trick there. Another little trick I'll tell you guys about. So this is something I do. Putting the cylinders on with the head studs like this, it makes things a lot easier, but also kind of complicates things too. But it complicates it more when you're trying to put cylinders on stock pistons, because these rings are so thin, and the bottoms of the cylinders, they have the taper in between the cylinders. It's really easy for the rings to get stuck when you're putting the cylinders down over everything, and it's easy to drag the rings out and break a ring or jam the ring between the sidewall and the cylinder. So you got to be really careful with that with stock pistons, and it's more specifically the oil rings, because the oil rings are super thin and they'll bend and they'll come out. So what I like to do on the Gen 2s, because they have the tapered cylinders at the bottom, is I'll put the openings of the oil rings directly on the thrust side, so it's the easiest to get it to them. Now with these, you don't use a ring compressor. You just use your fingers, and the bottoms of the cylinders are tapered, so you just squeeze the rings up under and you tap the cylinders down. And another thing I do when I'm putting cylinders on with these head studs is I'll do the inside cylinders first, and once I get the cylinders down past the bottom ring here, then I'll turn the crank and these pistons will come up, and then I'll do the outside cylinders, and that's the easiest way I've found to put cylinders on. So let's go ahead and get that done. Real quick, I just want to show you the cylinders here. So these are stock Gen 2 cylinders, and this is these cutouts in between the cylinders here. This is what I was talking about, where the rings really get hung up on, especially the oil rings, when you're putting the cylinders back on. So that's why when I position the oil rings, I always put the oil rings on the side here, because it's the easiest. And when you slide them down, if they're on the side, they'll usually stick out a little bit here, and on the sides here is usually where they get stuck. So that's just a little tip there. Also, these are stock pistons. These aren't the stock pistons from this engine originally. Since the rings did swell on them, I didn't know if the pistons were compromised at all. So I just grabbed 4 random stock pistons that I had sitting up on the shelf, and reuse those, and set the ring gaps and all that stuff. And I also went ahead and I ran a hone, just a quick hone through, just to clean the cylinders up. And I also went ahead and cleaned up the surface here. So just wanted to show you guys that real quick. Now we'll go ahead and throw a little bit of oil in the cylinders and then go ahead and drop them on top here. All right, gonna take a moment to show you guys a few things. So you guys saw, put the cylinders on, new Cometic head gasket. As always, make sure you got your dowel pins in. Oh, the other one's up there. And I went ahead and ran some brake clean across the surface here, just to make sure it's clean. I also went ahead and prepped the head studs. Now these are APE head studs. And there's a lot of debate out there, well, that you can't make over, 400 or 500 horsepower with them or something like that. And because the rumor is that they break. Well, I've made well over 600 horsepower with these head studs before. I don't know if I just get lucky with them or what, but one thing I do when I'm installing these things, the only difference, a lot of people say do the ARP head studs, but if you actually look at them, they're thinner the ARPs are thinner than these. Like the threads are still the same, but they actually neck down. So, but the only difference I see between the install directions between the APEs and the ARPs is the ARPs tell you to use the ARP, that Molly lube, this stuff here. The only time I've ever had one of these things break, because that's another thing, is people say that these, I see that these guys say that these things like to snap when you're torquing them. The only time I've ever had one of these snap was when I was using oil on the nuts and torquing them down. Ever since I've been using that ARP lube, I've never had a problem with them. So I'm gonna keep using them. Like I said, I've made over 600 horsepower before on them, so I'm not worried about it. But one thing I want to show you guys is how I do this. So I put the cylinders on, I put the head gasket on, and then before I put the head on, then I go ahead and I put the lube on the threads. Now, I see a lot of guys, what they'll do, they'll just take the stud and they'll just dip it in the thing and just kind of smear it around and just stick it in there, and it looks like dog turds built up around the threads here. And what happens is when you have all that excess on there, when you put the head on, the holes in the head act like a scraper, and it scrapes all that excess down and it puts it down on your head gasket. So it leaves you room for error when you put oil on the head gasket or grease. It allows you, or it opens up the opportunity for a potential leak, depending on how much you have gooped up around there. So what I do is I'll just put a whole bunch of my finger and grab it and pull it up. And if you can see, it packs it into the threads real nice. And then what I'll do is I'll take a rag and real lightly pull up and kind of clean the excess off. And that way the threads stay packed real well. So when you slide the head on, it doesn't pull all that extra crap down onto your head gasket. I also, before I put them on, I'll put a little bit of lube on the base of the nuts here, and also put some on each side of the washer, and that'll ensure that you get the most accurate torque. Because even if you leave the washers dry, sometimes the washers actually spin a little bit too. That'll raise your torque rating and give you a false rating. So that's just a little tip. But we also went ahead and put the timing chain guides in, and tensioner guide, timing chain, and the starter clutch, and we're ready to go ahead and slap this head on. So let's get to it. right, so here we go. It's completely all back together with the exception of the clutch. I got to pull that back out. The pressure plate's not going down all the way, so I got to see what that is. I'm running one of those NLR boost compensated clutches. So I don't know. We'll see what that's all about. Well, other than that, everything else is together. I thought I needed to order some gaskets. That's why I cut the time lapse short. But turns out I actually did have all the gaskets I needed. So it's all done. It's ready to go. Next thing to do is to slap it back in the bike and start putting everything back together and get it started and running. And we'll get it on the dyno and see if we can't blow it up. So stay tuned. And as always, like and subscribe. And see you on the next episode.